political stories over the past 24 hours. One of the things that have happened is the fact that up to around 24 hours ago, the DAP Kenya party had a deputy party leader. But as per 20 hours ago, Savula, who was the deputy party leader of that party, whose party leader is currently Eugene Wamalwa, and of course that is also the party that hosts and houses the Trans Nzoia governor, Honorable George Natembeya, who is also a very, very firebrand within the United Opposition camp, has now since jumped ship and left that particular party to join the government. Honorable Savula, who said that his intention is to join the government and not any particular party, has since now disowned his political party, saying that he is more convinced than ever that no person can ouster President William Ruto in the 2027 major polls. Now he's joining hands with Honorable Lusaka, who is actually currently the governor of Bungoma County, who is the chairperson of the wing that is now ensuring that President William Ruto gets his second term from the Western Kenya part. Savula has now stated that he has ditched the Democratic Action Party of Kenya, the DAP Kenya party, and is now joining this particular wing of the Kenneth Lusaka and of course the government to deliver the second win for President William Ruto. We will detail the full story shortly here at the People's Mirror on the effect of this and what has actually prompted Honorable Savula to now ditch this particular camp and of course join the government side. But remember, this is not new, because as early as during the time that the by-elections were actually going on in Malava constituency, Savula had already declared his support for not Seth Panyako but Ndakwa, where of course the DAP party or the DAP Kenya party was fronting Seth Panyako. So more details on those decisions of Savula and which party will he be using now to join the government will follow shortly. But a few hours ago, within the day, the Honorable Senator for Migori County has rather had a very tough time answering questions from very good journalists in a national television. Now, Honorable Eddy Oketch, who had actually written a letter and had hinted a possibility of starting a motion or originating a motion to ouster Honorable Edwin Sifuna as the Secretary General of the ODM party, before also writing another letter to actually revoke those particular grounds, now advanced his case against Honorable Sifuna in a national television. But in an interview that was to turn out very interesting and advance the positions that Honorable Senator in the party had against Honorable Edwin Sifuna, it turned out to be a very embarrassing and shocking interview for that particular Honorable Member of Parliament for the senatorial position of Migori County. So let's delve into what was going on. Why did Eddy Oketch first write a letter asking for the ouster of Sifuna only to take it away a day later? And what was the contents of that letter? And of course, what prompted his withdrawal? But other than that, we'll also want to take a look at the interview that he did today and the statements that he wanted to go right that ended up going wrong in the eyes of the public, and that has now showcased him and other individuals of the party that are contradicting the position of Edwin Sifuna as individuals that are only trying to safeguard their interest in this Ruto's government. So let's start from the beginning. Now, Eddy Oketch is the senator of Migori County. He's a first-time senator, and in his statements with the Nation television today, in an interview that he had with very renowned journalists, including, of course, Eric Latif and Miriam Bishar, Honorable Eddy Oketch hinted that he sits next to Edwin Sifuna in the Senate. So he used the terminology of deskmates in the Senate. But you remember very well that Honorable Eddy Oketch is the individual that now hinted a letter that was addressed to the ODM party asking for the ouster of Senator Sifuna. His main rage against Senator Sifuna was the fact that he felt that Senator Sifuna does not address the party position. Now, later on in his interview, when asked what the party position was, he used a lot of minutes trying to defend it, ended up saying that there is no party position currently, but the party is actually walking into a possible coalition with the UDA party into the 2027 major race. Now, this was the most interesting contradicting part. When he was asked then what is Sifuna contradicting if there is no current party position, the Honorable Senator went mute. But let's go back to the beginning where we started. So first, he prepared this motion, or rather was intending to prepare this motion, and through his lawyers, Osman advocates, they wrote a letter to the ODM party asking for the removal of Sifuna on the grounds that Sifuna does not speak the party position, one, and Sifuna might be speaking a position that they say is of commercial value. So he was saying that Sifuna, whenever he speaks, is speaking based on self-interest, and when Sifuna speaks, Sifuna possibly speaks out of commercial value. Later on, and very briefly, we will detail where are these particular accusations coming from, and it is very likely to say that these accusations are now coming out of the fact that recently Sifuna questioned Junet Mohamed when it came to the money of President Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, the commercial value allegation that is coming out of Senator Eddy Oketch might be premised on the fact that while Sifuna was questioning Junet rather on when President Uhuru Kenyatta's money stopped being worthy, it portrayed it as money that currently Sifuna is receiving. And so Honorable Eddy Oketch portrays that statements of Sifuna could be of commercial value, and we'll take a look at that shortly. But shortly after this particular letter was written, the lawyers again now wrote another letter that was channeled to the leaders of the ODM party, specifically the party leader, saying that after a conversation between their client being Senator Eddy Oketch, and the party leader, they arrived at a particular agreement. What was the agreement? The agreement was now that they should invoke, of course, section 16 of the constitution of the party. I don't know whether their constitution has a section of the article, but that particular article or section of the party's constitution, that is the ODM party, that calls for resolving these particular dialogues within the party. Now, later on in the interview, of course, Miriam asked Honorable Eddy Oketch, if not, Janet is the one that actually asked Honorable Eddy Oketch whether or not the dialogue failed, and so it portrayed an instance that Eddy Oketch prepared this particular letter to ouster Edwin Sifuna without first, of course, going through the channels of the party. And this, in its face value, before even we go deeper into these particular statements, as we just analyze the face value, if there are party structures that are existent within the party, that of course a party member can actually go and invoke and say, I do not feel that the Secretary General of the party is addressing the position of the party, then this particular member fails to go and use that particular avenue within the party or within the party constitution, and goes ahead to use an external avenue asking for the removal of the Secretary General using now a legal avenue, only to come back and resort to that particular party position within the constitution, then it shows a desire to remove Sifuna that was not based on party structures, but was based, I dare say, on individual positions and individual views that this particular senator and other members of the ODM party might have against their Secretary General. Now, this case against Sifuna, of course, as we said, did not find any audience before any court, even if it was a letter that was written by his lawyers. But now he advanced this particular case before Nation Media Group, and in a very interesting show earlier today in the Fixing the Nation, where he was a guest today. And here is where now he was advocating his case against Sifuna. And for purposes of removing doubt, it's sufficient to say that here is where now the nation had an opportunity to interact with the contents of this particular letter that was earlier on addressed to the ODM party. Now, we want to take a look at his case before this particular media house, and what does his case entail, and the loopholes that have been put in his case, so that we see whether or not it is a warranted case. Now, first thing he maintains, which was a very interesting thing, is that he says that Sifuna speaks things that are not agreed upon by the party. And of course, the interviews of this show are very interesting to remind him that these statements that Sifuna are saying right now are not new by any nature. These are the statements that Sifuna had been saying prior to the demise of course, the original party leader of the ODM party being Raila Odinga. And they told him that at that point, Sifuna was saying that, of course, who has said that there is not going to be a presidential candidate in 2027, and at that time pardon me, Sifuna was already attacking the broad-based government, saying that the only thing that was keeping them in this particular relationship with President William Ruto's party, the UDA party, was the 10-point agenda. So whereas, of course, the senator of Migori County, Eddy Oketch, was portraying an image that Sifuna is now speaking certain information that is akin to the ODM party and information that is new out of nowhere, the interviewers of that show reminded that particular senator at that point that these statements that Sifuna is saying right now are of course the actual statements that he had been saying prior to the demise of Raila Odinga. But it is very interesting angle of politics that we have also must be of course very open to say that the attack that Sifuna has been receiving now post the demise of Raila while he's making these statements are more adverse compared to the attacks that existed then before Raila Odinga's death. And of course, until the time that Raila Odinga made it public saying that Sifuna is making the party position and no one should attack Sifuna based on the statements that Sifuna is saying, if these attacks ever existed, then they must have been very silent attacks. Now that Raila is not there anymore, you see that these attacks are becoming more eminent on Sifuna, and the attacks are orchestrated by individuals that seem to be supporting the broad-based government. That makes it even safe to say that perhaps there is an increased investment from the proponents of this broad-based government to have individuals within the ODM party discredit themselves, and this is to the extent of the members of the ODM party that do not support the broad-based government, so as to make it seem as a uniform ODM idea when this particular last report is submitted on March 6th and these two parties decide to move forward together in a coalition. Now Sifuna portrays an image of a setback, an individual that prior to Baba's demise did not support this particular arrangement, and post Baba's demise is still very loud against this particular arrangement. The best way to discredit him would come from nowhere else except of course from his desk mate in the Senate, Honorable Eddy Oketch. And so if this is being organized by proponents of course of the broad-based arrangement to discredit Sifuna, then it is a move that has been calculated to the core to have the person that sits next to him in the Senate, of course, and who is also a member of this particular ODM party, be the first to discredit him. But let's go deeper into this particular interview and what happened after. Now, after Eddy has been reminded, or rather was reminded, that the statements of Sifuna have not changed pre or post Raila, there is now a statement that he said that was also very categorical, and he was talking about the presidential position that has been an issue of contention between ODM leaders. The leaders who feel like 2027 is a safe ground to now front a presidential candidate to go against President William Ruto, bearing in mind the fact that the ODM party is the long-lasting party that has survived these 20 years of elections and has a very solid support base that can actually challenge or interfere with President William Ruto's second election in 2027. But now Eddy Oketch portrays a certain image that is interesting, and he reminds Sifuna and the likes of such individuals who feel like that within the party, that the ODM party has only fronted a candidate, a presidential candidate, once since its formation in 2005. And this interesting fact now, Eddy Oketch says that the first time that the ODM party fronted a candidate just as a party was in 2007, and that was the last time the ODM party did that, saying that in 2013 the ODM party was under the CORD coalition, and it was the backbone of the coalition that had a presidential candidate, saying that Raila Odinga at that time was a coalition presidential candidate and not a presidential candidate of the ODM party. He says again that come 2017 the ODM party of course was again under NASA, that had the likes of including Honorable Mudavadi, who actually coined that term, the NASA term. Now Eddy Oketch says that in that particular year as well, the ODM party of course did not have a presidential candidate but was going under a coalition, and it is the NASA coalition that had a presidential candidate. Then you come out of 2017 to 2022, Honorable Eddy Oketch says that there was the Azimio coalition, which ODM party was just the solid backbone of, and so it is the Azimio coalition that provided fronted a candidate and not the ODM candidate. So he's saying that the conversation of fronting a candidate in 2027 as if it is the beck and call for the ODM party, that if they do not front a candidate in 2027, then it is the end of the party, is but a fallacy, saying that the ODM party has only fronted a candidate once, and that once was of course in 2007, and after that it has been going in coalition. Of course, these are statements that are fattening the cow for sale, rather you'd say that, or rather making the ground very fertile for the broad-based agenda should it be planted amidst the supporters of the ODM party. They will only be needed to be reminded that other than 2007, when this particular party had President William Ruto as one of its core members, the ODM party has never fronted any other candidate, and in isolation of a coalition in the subsequent election, being 2013, 2017 and 2022. And so this will be an easy way of telling the members of the party that moving into 2027, of course, you also do not have any obligation to go alone and follow the likes of Orengo, Sifuna and Osotsi that feel that this particular party can front a candidate of its own in 2027, but you'd rather now follow the ideas of course, Wandai and the advice of Mbadi and the likes that says that there is no fit candidate for 2027 that can come out of the ODM party and join a coalition and become the backbone of that particular coalition and front a presidential candidate under that coalition in 2027. Now, it's very important that we ask these questions the way they were asked, and we understand that what is the disjuncture? Where did it start to occur? The disconnect between Honorable Sifuna and his deskmate, or the disconnect between Honorable Sifuna and the party. Now, Honorable Eddy Oketch holds that there are certain statements that Sifuna has made post Baba's demise that Sifuna would have not made before Raila Odinga died. And so this is the basis for the attacks of Edwin Sifuna. It says words like washenzi being used on Junet Mohammed, words like calling for audit in burials being done by Sifuna on campaign funds are certain statements that now they believe Sifuna would have not made prior to Baba's death. Now, that is fit to that extent, but let's look at these statements. Eddy Oketch now says that if Sifuna is calling for accountability on campaigns fund, then Sifuna is faulting himself individually as a Secretary General. Now, there was merit in these statements, and where there is merit, of course, we give credit to its due. He was saying that the statements that were made by Sifuna concerning the accounts of these particular campaigns were faulting Sifuna on two grounds. On the first ground, is on the basis that Sifuna is the Secretary General of the party, and so by that nature itself, it means that he oversees the audits of the reports of this party. So he has seen he has overseen the audits of this report from as back as 2022 when these elections were done until now, and he has never talked about this particular financial problems within the party structures, and he went ahead to only make this statement publicly in a funeral. Now, if this particular issue was not already discussed within the party structures, and party members were also just learning of it like us, the rest of the members who are not party members of that party, later on from a funeral, and then it shows some extent of course, I'd rather say not so much seriousness from the side of the Secretary General, if that is the way he wanted to convey that information to its members. And another thing that he says about this that makes it look like a worthy statement is that the Junet Sifuna attack, of course, should not have been aired in a place like a funeral spectrum. But if party politics have gotten to the level that these individuals cannot sit down and actually discuss, then you cannot discredit individuals in whatever platform they choose to respond to each other. Because Junet Mohammed himself has also been using the X platform to address Sifuna as if it's the official channel of communication that the party would have wanted, to have two conflicting key officials of the party addressing each other via. So these statements are coming after that attack of Junet, which was made on the funds of Uhuru Kenyatta that allegedly, and Saitabao and other individuals who are key with the agent's money have also come out to clearly say that Junet's name is actually being mentioned as an individual that was not accountable with those funds. And so when Sifuna questioned the accountability of those funds, Honorable Eddy Oketch feels like that questioning was misplaced because of the platform where the questioning was done, and the terms like washenzi that Sifuna is using right now on people like Junet Mohammed are terms that he would have not used if Raila Odinga was alive. Let's go a little bit on into this of his this of his interview. He supports the broad-based arrangement, saying that ODM preparations, of course, might be preparations for coalition rather than preparations for an election. And of course, Sifuna called upon Junet Mohamed to explain that money. It seems it angered party members, including Atandi. You remember when these particular statements were made by Sifuna, Atandi was among the individuals that said that Sifuna was to go by this week, Tuesday. I think by yesterday, Sifuna would have gone. So it seemed like the party members were actually aggrieved by that statement, and they actually wanted Sifuna out. And so this particular move to have this letter being sent by Eddy Oketch might have not been an original creation of Eddy Oketch, but a discussion within certain section of the party officials to have Sifuna out. They believe that Sifuna is speaking a language that is strange after Baba's death. And Eddy says that Sifuna oversees audit of financial accounts and of course should have revealed that information first to the party before revealing that information to the public through a burial. Now, the most interesting statement that he said, of course, out of this interview, that's also worthy of putting before the mirror, is that he said that if you are a Secretary General and you are speaking to a group that is divided between 70% supporting one place, 20% supporting another place, and 10% is undecided, and you find yourself coming from the 20% supporting another place while the 70 are on a different platform and the 10 are undecided, then as a Secretary General, it calls upon you to unify the voice of all the three factions in your speech to actually now mirror the fact that you're a Secretary General of the all. And so that's a very impactful statement on how the ODM have been handling their business, because certain key officials of the party feel that Sifuna now sits in a very powerful, a very, very powerful position where his statement could be a personal statement but could be backed by the fact that he's the Secretary General of the party to actually be adopted as a party statement. And while now the structures of the party are still really struggling with the overall leadership of the party, the position of the Secretary General remains to be a very powerful position of that party. And so according to Senator Eddy Oketch and the rest, they feel that he feels like that particular position needs to address the voices of everyone within the party, even if the Secretary General himself comes from the minority section of the overall agreeable position. So that is the position that is actually advancing, and that's the position why he wrote that letter. But Utende Amolo and of course Millie have also commented in this particular Junet and Sifuna fight. Millie Odhiambo said that this fight is definitely not about the Uhuru's money or the Ruto's money. No, this fight is actually between individuals, and to put an end to it, Millie asked these individuals to actually honor the spirit of Raila Odinga and of course the spirit of Baba that brought people together. Now these fights are still going on, but Eddy Oketch now embarrassed himself in that particular interview, and the interviewee asked a very simple question on what is the position of the party moving forward, and he could not defend that. In a lot of circles he could not defend that, and when now he declared that there is no solid position of the party currently and the party is just talking into other positions moving into 2027, they asked him what position then has Sifuna contradicted, and that actually put an end to the weight of that particular interview. Now they seemed to those particular interviewees in their own words that this particular senator was just feeling that Edwin Sifuna anachoma wakikula, and that is where the problem lies, because they should be eating, but Sifuna does not want them to eat peacefully in this government. Away from that, now Ayub Savula has left his party, the Democracy Action Party for Kenya, which is actually led by Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, a co-principal within the United Opposition. And now Ayub Savula is citing grounds that there is no one individual that can ouster President William Ruto in the 2027 race. Mr. Savula says now he has moved on and given up, says that no one forms a party to actually be in the opposition. Everyone forms a party to be in government, and he says that the ODM party that they have been forming coalitions with, including the Azimio coalition that they formed in the previous election, is now currently in government, and so as a result of that, he is following too. He has called and asked upon the United Opposition and the journalists to provide for him one individual that can outsmart President William Ruto in 2027, and he is convinced that there is none, including the co-principals of the United Opposition, where his party leader, Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, is actually a co-principal, and he was just the deputy. If anything happened to Eugene Wamalwa, God forbid, including incapacitation of whatever kind, then the co-principal out of that particular structure would have been Ayub Savula in the United Opposition. Now he has jumped ship. He's saying that now he wants to join politics in the side of government, saying that there is no sane politician who should not be in government. Now when asked which party will he use to now join government, he says that he does not want to join any party. He only wants to join the government. And so as a result of joining the government, he has formed this particular coalition with Baraza to have him join government, but he has offered himself to be the vice of the movement that is now being chaired by Honorable Governor Ken Lusaka in the western area, as the ingredients of making sure that Ruto becomes a two-term president, and that the voters of the western part of Kenya makes that possible. So this particular revelation by Ayub Savula, of course, puts the DAP Kenya in a bad state within the structure of the United Opposition. It also weakens the United Opposition. If the deputy party leader of a key party, that is one of the vehicles that you're using to convince Kenyans to vote you in 2027, leaves and joins the president, then it could be seen from two angles. An individual angle where his interest might have of course superseded the national interest and is being bought perhaps, or rather he has just seen light and he has seen that your camp cannot win this election and the president camp can win this election. Those are two possibilities that are now being read out of the Ayub Savula's deflection from the DAP Kenya deputy party leadership to join President William Ruto's campaign trail under the campaign management of Honorable Ken Lusaka. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure recapping those two stories, what is happening out of the ODM party, and of course what is happening out of the DAP Kenya party, where now Ayub Savula has left them and is intending to join the president without any party. Here the People's Mirror will keep you updated, and we will comment on what happens in the Kenyan political scene as they unfold. Keep it here, we will detail more stories. It's been a pleasure. Until our next episode.